Brooklyn on his hat. All right, I like that. I'm actually painting the Brooklyn Bridge. The latest painting I'm working on is Brooklyn Bridge. It's this giant student teacher demonstration in New York City. And the Brooklyn Bridge is full of people coming to
Ooh,
the
That
demonstration.
sounds cool.
Yeah. It's
doesn't look like that now.
pretty...
Fortunately not.
Manhattan was like a ghost town on Monday.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi.
Everywhere.
Well, we have a large
Hi.
crowd. We're gonna get started. So Katie, take it away.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. And a big thank you to David Greene, who will be leading us through a presentation and sharing stories from his experiences as an activist and as an artist. We're really excited to have him speak with us for our Fleisher Art and Social Activism series. And you can check more for more upcoming presentations like this one on our website, and take some classes maybe sometime and get to be as good of an artist as David has become. David, do you want to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. I mean, I know some people who are coming on, but I was born in Brooklyn, in East New York section of Brooklyn, and I'm 75 years old as of this October. With a lot of years, mostly spent in a lot of places, West Virginia, Ohio, New York, and now Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and been involved with community and labor education and organizing, political education for at least 50 years, and learned a lot of things, met a lot of great people, and yeah, I guess had a lot of different jobs besides being an educator and organizer. Worked in factories, I worked in the coal mines, I worked in a chemical plant, I worked in more than I can remember. And some of the art that you'll see or have seen already is a reflection of some of that work and some of the people I've met. So I see art as an important tool or weapon for education in a time when that's all needed, education for social change, and maybe for building social movements and for sparking people's imagination and critical thinking and their own stories, which is very important. My story is partially the paintings, but I keep realizing that the paintings are both my story and the story of the people who are in them. So we'll take a look at them in a little while, but look forward to this. And yeah, I'll talk to you more. If not, somehow during this thing, after this thing, this event, and we'll see. And I want to thank Fleisher for helping this to happen, and Gerard and Katie for implementing it, or opening the gate, so to speak.
Well, we're really happy to provide this platform because, like you said, it's important now more than ever to have these stories told. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and I'll pull up a PowerPoint for you guys to see some of the work that David has done and can share with us today. So now I can't see anyone. And I'm going to put it in present mode. And like you said, we're here to spark inspiration and action for the common good, for communities. Do you want to talk
I was
about
gonna
that?
say, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat so I could ask them, but we will have a Q&A at the end. So, okay.
Okay, so I've only been painting and drawing for about 3 years. I took a class when had cancers. I've had 3 different kinds of cancers. 2 are gone so far, and 1 is current. And I've had heart problems. And in all that kind of thing, I was no longer able to do a lot of physical things that I did before. I couldn't go door knocking, mostly because of the uneven sidewalks in places. I'd kill myself falling down, knocking on doors in houses that needed repair or different kinds of conditions. So I took an art class at a senior center at the Heritage Center in Newark, Ohio, at the age of 72, I think, and started drawing. And at first did some kind of basic drawings. They get you practicing, the teacher got us practicing sort of fundamental drawings. A picture of an owl was one I drew, and then a picture of steamboat or something. And then I thought, well, why not paint a picture about something in my life, something that's really happened, because I wanted my life to be useful in many ways and to be a means to wake people up, a means to wake me up, and for us to educate each other. And so I started drawing, and I took this picture from a publication that the United Mine Workers Union, this was in West Virginia, this scene. It's in Gary, West Virginia, and very close to where my wife was born and grew up in the coal fields, and very close to where I worked in the coal mines. And I thought, looking for a picture of a coal camp, I saw this picture or remembered it and decided I'd draw it with a pencil, with graphite. And so this is my first drawing, and it was interesting because I started drawing it and people immediately started saying in the class, a lot of the people in the class who were really good-hearted family people who were looking for just some relaxation, expression, some art. Anyway, they came over and looked at the painting and said, "What are you painting? What are you drawing?" Like it's odd when a lot of the drawings are flowers or Christmas events or a family gatherings or something, and very, very well done sometimes. But I thought, well, I'll try to do a little bit of drawing about something that I lived through. And so this is a little bit of a picture of the coal fields, and it's actually good that it's black and white and it's graphite and charcoal, because the coal fields are full of coal dust, left over by an industry that's an absentee landlord industry that's taken all the minerals from the land and left a lot of damage. So this is a coal train loaded with coal pulling out and going away. So I thought that was interesting, and it sparked questions from people. They said, "What is that? Well, where is that?" Some people actually knew it because they had experience with West Virginia or with the coal fields. Mostly didn't, but then people started to look at the paintings and say, and it was a means of creating discussion. I didn't plan it that way, but it happened, and it got more so as time went on. So.
That's so interesting. And I love the connection you made about the materials and the subject matter. I hadn't thought of that before. That's really powerful.
As Janet, my wife, could testify, and millions of people, the coal fields are often, especially where coal is mined, are very sooty. There's a lot of dust and a lot of leftover from the extraction of coal, which is has been the base of the energy industry in the United States for a lot of years.
Yeah. And here's the next slide, some more images of coal miners and an automobile factory setup.
Well, this one is particularly interesting because I didn't have a picture to go for the inside of the auto plant. As you might guess, if you're an auto worker, you don't stop and stand there and take pictures of the inside of your plant. they would probably fire you for doing that and say, what are you doing? You know, why are you doing this? So I was very active in the union at this plant. I was an auto workers local of the United Auto Workers Union. It was a first American Motors plant, which then became a Volkswagen plant as Volkswagen moved into manufacturing in America. And I didn't have a good picture of the machines. I kind of knew from my memory what they sort of looked like. And so you can kind of see on the left, there's some workers taking sheets of metal, a very thin metal, got thinner every year, and putting it through these stamping machines, which shaped it into the parts of the car. And here is this, on the right-hand side are the hoods, and on the left-hand side is the raw metal going in. And when I was drawing this painting, I thought, or drawing it and then painting it, I thought, well, I didn't expect a reaction from the class, but one of the women in the class, an older woman, came over and said, I used to work in an auto plant. And so she started talking to me about working in the auto plant. And when I was drawing this picture, you could probably tell there are little black puddles around these machines because there was oil leaking from the machines. And the oil was a serious safety hazard. And it's one of the big issues that the workers in the plant, and there were 470 of them at the time, were focused on was safety. Just as an aside, they even had a stitch list. We had a stitch list as the education committee for the local that we made up of the number of stitches, the average number of stitches that people in the plant got when they were working on this sharp metal. And the average number of stitches was 33. So that means 470 workers each averaged 33 stitches from working in this plant. But the woman's interest was very interesting and woke me up a little bit to the potential of some things about painting or writing or cultural work that is about your own experience, your own life, not just about somebody a distance away, but something you felt and seen. So that was cool. I enjoyed that. It's a very simple, plain picture, and my painting style is very undeveloped. I'm not highly skilled as an artist in that respect. I think my skill is more bringing the social and the art together in the work.
And David, there's another question, a comment saying that the painting misses the noise that there is at the factory, which is so true. But I wanted to ask you a question about, did you had any like a reference for this painting? Were you looking at any particular artist when you did it?
Well, that's interesting because several things. Well, as I started to paint, I started to look at lots of art that was social realism, was a reflection of social reality. And so I looked at, of course, this painting doesn't do that justice, but Jacob Lawrence has always impressed me, a Black American painter who painted sort of very flat images with bright colors, but of people doing things. And I thought of that as less dimensional, less three-dimensional, but very salient, very sharp, very impressive, striking, wakes you up, makes you think. So I think about that. And then, of course, from there, it wasn't hard for me to get, and I've also fallen in love with the Mexican muralists, which I'll get into in a little while, but because of their confrontation with reality, they're using the art to say, look what's really going on here. We should be questioning all these things. And we could use some of that art today in terms of what's going on in our government and the country. But yeah, so I think that's it. And the noise thing is absolutely right. It's deafening. I'm sure you lose hearing capacities by working there. The machines are very loud, very dangerous. In front of each machine is a pit where the scraps from metal that are cut, that are not used, fall. And one of the workers who, when I was there, a young man who was real overeager to work and impress his bosses, fell into one of those holes. And he got 137 stitches
Oh my
in many different
goodness.
places. But it was the danger of whether he was going to get die, because it was very close to his veins that he was, some of the cuts were. But these machines are, the danger in occupational safety and health is an issue of this picture too.
Yeah, and I think this picture really helps get at the notion that art can be a unifying force and bring people together and start those conversations. And obviously it worked for you. You were able to have someone be vulnerable and tell her story in a way that she might not have even thought to do, but she was inspired.
Yeah. Well, another part of this story is that workers in the plant actually they were organized into a union local, which was not dealt with well by the international of the union, but also not dealt with well by the corporate kind of entities involved, Volkswagen and American Motors. But the point anyway is that there was a very big strike over safety, and a lot of people were fired. A lot of other plants were shut down in relationship to this because they also had safety issues connected with the work. But it was also represented people acting together and seeing their common purpose in what they were doing,
Absolutely. I think that really ties well into your next works this is also about unionizing, correct?
Yeah, well, it is definitely about organizing. I'll start with the one on the right because it's a little quicker, easier to explain. In 1974, workers in Eastern Kentucky, coal miners in Eastern Kentucky were on strike. There was a movie, Harlan County, USA, which won an Academy Award about this particular struggle in Harlan County. And this is a rally that I helped with other people to organize, of a couple hundred miners in West Virginia, which is not Kentucky where the mine was that was unionizing. But these are miners and families who are already in unions who were saying, it says in the sign, it's hard to read, but it says support Brookside, what does it say? Miners. Yes, support Brookside miners. And I think the lettering is more trouble for me than the faces. But so this is some people. On the left is more of what my wife says should have been a mural, great big mural, and I kind of was experimenting here with trying to tell a full story, which is very hard to do in a painting. Even a mural is hard to do. So up on the top layer of this painting, you have coal miners digging with a shovel and pick, and a mule and a cart, the way coal was being pulled out of the mines way back, a long time ago. And then you have the more modern machinery. And with that modern machinery is a lot more production, but also mountaintop removal. The environmental practice of removing the top of a mountain completely, not environmental practice, the counter environmental practice, and just throwing away the rock into the local streams or creeks, and then taking what coal is readily available. And it's a cheap way to mine, but it's very profitable and is very destructive to the communities. And so way down below here, you see some miners in wheelchairs and with crutches who are part of the product of this whole process of industrial production and extraction here. And then at the very end of that row is the newer means of energy. So there's actually some windmills there. There's solar panels, and there's hydroelectric power, which is, three avenues that are being positively explored by energy industry for their own profit, but still. And then right below the top line is a river, a stream that starts out blue and with fish in it. And as it goes through the industrial process, it becomes more and more black, more brown and black and polluted. The second row here has a picture of a broad form deed and of company store, a yellow dog contract, and some rich people sitting underneath the ticker tape and eating a big pig, some global capitalism reaching around the world for economic gain. And then there's the virus. You can't see that very well easily, but there's a picture of the COVID virus there and particle and some children. And the bottom line is about organizing. So at first, the organizing was very scattered, and it became the union of the workers in the coal mines. And then it became, at a certain point, the union of steel workers, of coal miners, of auto workers, and many others in the 1930s and 40s in the United States. And at the end, you have a big fist going up to represent, it's very representative, this one, of Get Wise Organize, is that people need to get together if they're going to change things. So all of it is about organizing that way.
Absolutely. I think these images really capture the idea of unity really well, especially something I just realized on the image on the right. The person speaking on stage is partially cut off, and the focus is the crowd of people, because that's what it's really about. It's about the masses, it's about joining together. It's not about a figurehead or one voice. It's about everyone coming together and connecting.
Yeah, I think that's good.
This is also a really powerful story in your life, your friend.
Yeah, and this is a friend who some of you know or may not know, and this is also somewhat one-dimensional kind of things. And this is a little bit like some of Lawrence's stuff, though I flatter myself by saying that. This is Steve Smith, who was a friend in Newark, Ohio, who was active in what became the Freedom School of Licking County in Ohio, which is very active and has been active all along the way in education for social change, for leadership development. He was also somebody who fought against slumlords, and somebody he was the only Black businessman in Newark, Ohio, and he was singled out, I believe very clearly, framed and unjustly prosecuted and sent to prison for 11 years, which he is still serving. He's in jail now for almost 5 years. So this is his trial. And what I decided to do, so much of this art stuff for me has been experimenting with different forms. And so this form, I don't even know how many of you are familiar with what's called a triptych, but it is like 3 panels that represent different stages of something or different views of something. And so the older triptychs were the Middle Ages kind of stuff, or Renaissance stuff, which is like the religious ones, which is the birth of Christ and the crucifixion and the afterwards, whatever those 3 things are, that they're portrayed in different ways. I don't know exactly, but the Ben Shahn reminder is an interesting one too, because I've been looking at his work ever since I started doing this and got inspired by people's questions. And this raised a lot of questions, right? Newark, Ohio, Licking County is largely white. Columbus, to the west of us, it has a larger Black population, and Cleveland and Cincinnati, like a lot of areas of the country. But So Stephen was the only Black businessman in Newark, Ohio, and he's prosecuted, I think, very poorly, defended in court, and then sent to prison. And so on the left here is the supporters who came to see Stephen, and on the right here is the all-white jury, which convicted him in 2.5 hours. And so he's spending, and Stephen, by the way, is such a progressive force and an educator. This is always, it's always amazing to me how many people are so much and we hear so little about them because they're not publicized. They're the untold stories. They may be many of you who are listening to this thing that I'm working with Katie, that, but they're the unheralded, you know, the ones you don't hear about. And that's those stories need to get told. Like they say at the end of Hamilton, who will tell their stories? Well, who will tell these stories? So I use the art to try to do that. So these are people you could identify. I'm in there actually. Janet's in there in the background. This is Steve's mom, some friends and supporters from the Freedom School. The jury is older people, a lot of whom have had issues with drug problems in their families. And Steve was convicted falsely, I think, of possession and trafficking of drugs. And Stephen's been a Muslim for 25 years, among other things. And he's very much against drugs. And there was a package delivered to his restaurant, his small businessman, and it didn't have his name on it. It didn't have the right address on it, but they used that package to convict him, to say it came to his workplace. It came, and that was enough. Circumstantial evidence in the court was enough. So we keep in touch, Stephen and I. But when I was doing this series, people were fascinated, and it allowed me to relay what I know of Stephen's story and my story connected with that, because I think of us all as brothers and sisters. And so I don't think, you know, anybody's better than anybody else. So Stephen was an educator. He's doing education inside the prison. He's done classes on leadership development with young people from the inner cities. I mean, I don't know if I could do that if I was in prison. So kudos to you, Stephen.
Question for you: Has he seen the work?
Say what? Oh, well, he's seen some of it. I haven't been able to send it, but his girlfriend, his fiance, who is temporarily in Florida, sends him whatever I send her. And so I sent him, I sent him all, you know, as much as I can. And we correspond. There's something called JPay. Costs money, but you can email back and forth. And he's tried to call here, but the prisons have interfered with it a lot. Last time he called, and they disconnected the phone, and I couldn't get back. You can't call him back. He has to call you in the time he's allowed. So, but Stephen is a wonderful man. He's just father of 6 children. Yeah, can't say enough about some of these people. They're just amazing. They're like, maybe a lot of you are just amazing. Okay. Yeah.
Here's another, oh no, that's not a triptych. This is more of the references.
Yeah. Somebody just asked what town Stephen was in. It was Newark, Ohio, east of Columbus. And I have newspaper clips. I didn't say this, should have said it. But alongside the paintings, I put together, with help, news clips of the charges against him, what the supporters were saying, what was going on with the Bureau of Criminal Investigations about who investigated the drugs. And there was some kind of big scandal about their office giving the results that the local prosecutors wanted when they were asked questions. So there was a lot of newsprint that went alongside of this that was aimed at, giving people more information, including, which I didn't get ready for this thing, but Stephen's mailing address, which you'd love to receive cards. If any of you feel inclined, I'd be glad to share my email and give you his how to communicate with them, because he's lonely. He's had COVID, he recovered. The level of COVID in the prison, which is Warren Correctional Institute, is very, very high. But he keeps going. He's something else.
Where did you display the paintings before?
Okay, well, two places. One is I got the local library in in Granville, Ohio, which is near where we were, allowed us to put them up on the walls. Somebody from the Chamber of Commerce was really helpful. And then we had an art show in June of last year at a Denison sort of arts outreach, Denison University Arts Outreach building space. It's now no longer there, I understand, but it was, so we had an art show in June of 2000, let's see, what year is this? 2019, it must have been, because we left in October of 2019. So yeah.
Yeah, these works are really powerful, and I think they do a great job at starting that conversation and getting people engaged. Our prison system in America is absolutely horrendous and corrupt, and for you to provide an opportunity to share his story and connect him with people in a community is something really special. And I think that it's a really noble thing.
I think also, just as an aside, his fiance went to visit before COVID and one time, and she kissed him on the cheek, and they said they interrupted that kiss on his cheek, and they said, you're not allowed to have any physical contact with the prisoner, and they put him in solitary for 30 days as a consequence of her kissing him on the cheek. Just unbelievable conditions, I mean, you just makes you want to stay away from prison as much as you can.
Yeah.
But still startling.
Well, hopefully it makes people want to organize and change the things that are wrong with our systems. And
Yeah.
I think that these kinds of stories definitely activate those feelings within us.
If anybody wants to be in touch with Stephen or to offer support, let me know. And you can go on. I just wanted to make sure the
Yeah, I
door.
think that's great. I think it would be really great to get that information out there. I think anyone should reach out to him, me, Gerard, and talk about these paintings a little bit. I think they're very vibrant compared to the juries.
So for many of you, I think some of you may know the Mexican muralist. I've just been stunned. Our daughter is from Guadalajara, daughter-in-law, and my son and she and our granddaughter Juliana live in Guadalajara now. And there's a place called used to be an orphanage in Guadalajara that has all the paintings of, no, not all, a lot of the paintings of Orozco, the Mexican muralist. And they're all over the walls, and it's sort of glorious. It's like you're getting thrown into a mixture of centuries, and you kind of get it. It's exciting, and it's very much critical of the role of the government, of the church, of the military, and of the capitalists. And it's very well done. It's very powerful images, and they're 50 feet tall or 30 feet tall, and wide. They're like murals on the sides of some of the buildings in Philadelphia. And So I've been inspired by Rivera and Sequeiros and Orozco, and I don't hesitate to say that they're just, there's a certain aura about that, as well as there's been a lot of American social realists, you know, not as well known, like Jacob Lawrence is one, and Ben Shahn, somebody mentioned, is another one, you know, and but anyway, so here's these three paintings, okay, two paintings. The one I painted when I was in Newark, Ohio, which is it's called Tent City, USA. And oh, I didn't know there's a show at the, oh, wonderful. There's a show on the muralists at the Whitney. Great. Anyway, the tent city is just a composite of several tent cities. I've been to a number of tent cities with people. I was inspired. One of the leaders of a tent city at Tompkins Square Park in New York City, his name was Ronaldo Casanova, since passed away, but tried to use art later in his life to express his life. Very hard story, very rough, you know, rough conditions, but so he's telling his story. So I'm inspired by him, and also lots of people who set up these tent cities are organizers. You know, there are people who were saying, we got to get together. We got to do something. You know, we have to have some protection. And so this is an effort at Tent City. And I got some advice on this one from homeless people who are not organized, but from homeless people at a homeless outreach center that a good friend of ours and Freedom School board member, Nancy, works in this homeless outreach center. A few people from there who are homeless said, you know, what you need here is you need a clothesline and you need an American flag. And I said, well, yeah, you're right. I just forgot. I'm not conscious of all these things all the time. So the clothesline is because what else are you going to do with clothes if there's no washing machines around? There's no, I mean, nobody's washing your clothes for you or anything like that. So you wash your clothes somewhere, maybe a fire hydrant, and then you hang them up somewhere to dry. So there's the clothesline in there. And at the very end, you can't see it very well in this shot, but these paintings are 48 inches. So they're big and you can see more detail. And a lot of these homeless encampments are by riversides, you know, or under overpasses or ramps or something. And that's what this one is. And the American flag is partially because people want to say they're patriotic, but also because some of them are veterans. Many are veterans. They fought in the military or they were in the armed forces, but they come home and somehow or other they're homeless. And one other short thing about this one, which I think is important, and Ron Casanova was the person who I was talking about a little while ago at Tompkins Square. They thought that if they put American flags over all their tents, that then the police wouldn't be able to burn them down because they'd have to burn the American flag. But the police came in and burned the American flags. They burned all the tents down and left and hauled away whatever possessions were there. They didn't kill anybody. They just got rid of their possibility of living places. And the picture up here on the left, in 2008, I went on a trip. I worked in literacy programs in New York City where people were organizing students and teachers to get more programs. And I was part of that. And we had a workshop for leadership development. About 60 people were there. And I held up this article about Venezuela that said, they managed to wipe out illiteracy, or they were in the process of wiping out illiteracy in Venezuela. And so one of the students, a literacy student, said, well, if they can do that in Venezuela, how come they can't do it here in this rich country? You know, and it was a good question and a good provocation. So the person in the back of the room said, I'm from Venezuela and I worked in the literacy program, and we are doing stuff to wipe out literacy. And then she ended up becoming our friend and invited us to come to Venezuela. And we didn't have a lot of money, so not much more than a pot to piss in, but we gathered our money together, what we had, and a few donations. And then we went to Cuba, Venezuela, and Mexico to talk to people about what kind of education they were doing and to affect people's lives, to help people organize. So this is a picture of a favela, which is sort of like a slum, poor people's town on the side of a hill. And there are lots of them in Latin America and other parts of the world. This is a particular picture that I took, a photograph I took when we were there. And there's a fair going on in the front. And then the houses are actually a lot brighter colored in this painting than what they are in real life, because people have painted their houses, but because of the conditions of life for so many people, the houses are deteriorating. The water system is not very good, wasn't very good at the time. They were trying to do work with this water system and trying to do all kinds of things with community. But I painted the colors brighter than what they were because I wanted it to be hopeful. And to be the possibilities. What are the possibilities here? So the fair is a mixture of people, and Venezuela, like most places these days, is very multinational. And the umbrellas were fun, and you can't tell it from the sign, but there's a cheering for Chavez sign here somewhere, and there's a sign that says the name of a business is called Caracas Unlimited, which is fabricated. And then over here it says, I think it says Revolucion Bolivariana, however you say that. It's the Bolivarian. My tongue is getting caught here. Help me out.
Now my tongue's getting tied.
Bolivarian Revolution. Anyway, some really incredible things we saw in Latin America that I'd love to talk about.
We've got a few more slides left.
Okay.
So do you want to talk about these last few, and then we can take some more questions from.
Yeah, I'll do this a little speedier. This is 3 women from West Virginia who are helping coal miners get food stamps during a strike. Now, these 3 women are part of what was called the West Virginia Welfare Rights Organization. And I was the state organizer for this group for 3 or 4 years. And the woman in the middle is Shelva Thompson, an incredible local leader, Ethel Brewster, Joan White. The miners are a little more anonymous, but they are in front of the Department of Welfare, and they're giving them information about their basic rights, which is sort of a change of role, because the roles in lots of places are the workers are the workers. They're the ones earning a living. They work hard. They're determined. And everybody else is lazy and shiftless and living off the public whatever, you know. And that's, first of all, that's not at all true, but it's also, here's women who are helping the miners to get what they need. It's an act of solidarity. It's an act of saying we're really the same. And I think that's an important underlying thing for me, is that we are in a common position, whether we think we are or not. And maybe conditions that are unveiling themselves these days are pointing that out. I hope in a good way we'll figure out how to do that, because because people need to be together and need to see how they are made from the same loaf of bread kind of thing. Yeah, so you could go on.
Well, that's so beautiful. And just to emphasize that, like, everyone has so much individual power that when we come together, it becomes even more. And I love that. I think this is a great story and beautiful painting.
Thank you.
This is my favorite painting of the bunch, personally. I think this is gorgeous.
Okay, not many of you know him, but his name is Charlie Claiborne. He was 80 years old when we met him. He'd worked in the coal mines for 50 years and was crippled from that work, had black lung disease. And at the end of, and he was active in organizing other miners, retired disabled miners into, and women, their wives, and families into the Black Lung Associations, which fought for better health benefits and compensation. And Charlie had great big hands. This is this is also an experiment, but I had fun with this one because we always talk about Charlie's hands. He would pull these two big hands together, if you could imagine my hands, right? And say, this is the working class coming together. This is, people who are poor and working, joining forces to make things right. And he'd say it as a prayer at the beginning of a meeting, religious man, and always had a frown on his face, but very, very sweet, an unsung hero, and a leader in many ways, and somebody who provoked other people to ask questions. Cool.
Yeah, I love this painting too because it feels like he wants to hug you, like he wants to embrace everyone. It's beautiful.
Well, he does, and I had an interesting kind of experiment. I took a few classes at Fleisher along the way here, just in the last year, or last something or other. And anyway, the field here and the contrast of color is something I was interested in. And of course, I look at Van Gogh and I'm just struck by all that kind of glaring representation of color too. In the background here is the wheat or whatever it is, the grain or field gets darker. And I like that kind of image of the depth of the thing, as you're going backwards. Anyway, I played with it. First, on my first draft of this one, I made the hands too straight and too big. And my wife was very sharp in good ways of saying, what were Charlie's hands really look like? Like not just what would a pair of hands look like. I mean, and I do drawing a bunch when I paint. I draw before I paint a lot of times, many times. Sometimes I use a computer to look at images of things and see how they're close to what I could draw or something. And playing with anatomy, a lot of things. I'm learning a lot of things along the way.
Yeah. And art has that power that even if it doesn't look exactly like it would in real life, it captures the feeling, the presence of someone. And I think this does a really good job at creating someone who's stern and warm and larger than life, and very complex. And I think that's really, really beautiful.
Well, and Charlie actually, in terms of his size, was smaller than me, but he was bigger than me.
But his presence is it's very
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is interesting to see your progression of work and how you apply new skills into each work as you learn about the craft. And I'm sure that similar things happen in the organizing sphere, where you take a little bit of information and apply it as you go on.
Yeah. And I think the cultural arenas are wide open to that kind of learning from the people and from the realities that are being dealt with. So this is Newark, Ohio, also. Early in the days of the first few years of the Freedom School, Some people got together. We helped some people get together to organize around housing. They were interested in housing rights and tenants' rights, and in the slumlords that were around. There's a lot of good landlords, but there's some dozens of not so good landlords who take advantage of people in tremendous ways. So one of the things that this image is about is the woman who's back facing us in that picture with the red hair, taking a camera picture actually, was Lisa Best, who was actually the inspiration for a lot of that motion. And so she's an unsung hero, a very, very powerful woman who was very smart, very critical, very abrasive, used language that a sailor wouldn't use coming out of a bar drunk, but she, I like that expression anyway. And she, anyway, she's taken the picture. She encouraged the idea of picketing a landlord's home in the communities where they live. And so this is one small picket line, 8 people who went to this guy's house and held up signs saying what they say, slumlord, blah, 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 all this stuff. He was very abusive. There were many who were worse abusers. This is the news clip from which the painting was partially made. I didn't have the photograph. News clips that are little teeny parts of a page are a little harder to work with, but I was there, so I do know some of what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody just pointed out he lived in a $500,000 house where the slum conditions where he was dealing with were like pieces of crap. Yeah, I could describe one to you at some point. Anyway, yeah, impressive and good people, salt of the earth people who are saying something's wrong here and we feel the injustice. Some we're affected by it directly ourselves, and some we feel the hurt of other people. And so we're not going to stand for it. And there were other picket lines. There was a big picket line at a housing project, very controversial. Many more people. Steve Smith was part of that and other people.
This is our last slide.
Okay, let me tell you this one sort of quickly. This is from Cuba. This is Calvin Miles and David Greene, who are standing in front of the Museum of the Campaign for Alphabetization for Literacy. So this is the museum. This is one of the only museums in the world, as far as I know. At the time, it was the only one of a campaign to wipe out illiteracy. And this is in Cuba where, we're supposed to have a dictatorial conditions as opposed to the United States, where they have a campaign to wipe out illiteracy. And incidentally, Cuba has a very high literacy rate. And so you got to ask questions about what is really true that's being told. And then parallel to that, and the museum was very interesting by itself, and Calvin was amazing. He was somebody who worked as a sharecropper in North Carolina, and at 39 in New York City was when he first learned to read and write in a literacy program. And then he became the most outspoken leader of people on literacy programs in the country. He spoke at the United Nations. He was very articulate. He didn't get rich. He died kind of poor in a lot of ways, but he was had a heart attack when we got back from the trip and died. And then on the right is 26 flags, I think. You have to check me on the number here, but these are the nations to which Cuba sent teachers and literacy programs to help them increase their literacy. And you got to ask, what kind of country does that? How terrible of a country could it be? I'm not selling Cuba shares here, but I'm saying how terrible could they be if they encourage literacy all over the world? In Venezuela, one of the first things that Chavez did, or soon after he became president of Venezuela, was to produce 1,000,000 copies of Don Quixote in Spanish to distribute free around the world. Why don't our leaders do stuff like that? Or why don't we get them to? Better question, why don't we get them to? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I think art also opens up this window to changing perspectives and seeing the other side of someone's story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's critically important to say who will tell their stories. And I think I invite, if you haven't already done this, I know some of you are doing this triple time, but if you haven't already done this, tell your story, in many ways culturally, and there are many avenues, and tell your story and tell the story of other people who aren't being heard. Power, that's some power. And it has the potential to change people's minds and the potential to create a force that can move against what's happening in this country right now. This is dangerous moves to the right in this country.
And David, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you a question. When you started painting, did you see art as a tool to tell your story? Is that what?
Well, not exactly. I mean, I didn't right away. I have the perspective that I look at things and I try to see everything as a tool for change, as a weapon or tool. Like Bertolt Brecht wrote a poem in praise of study, and he says, "Pick up a book, for it is a weapon." He's talking to somebody who doesn't read or hasn't read. And so I think, pick up a painting, pick up a paintbrush, do something. Anyway, I didn't see it anywhere near as clearly. It's evolved. And it sort of says, well, why don't I paint that? So I've got a list 6 pages long of things to paint. I don't know if I'll have enough time. I'm not sure what my lifespan will be at this point, but I'm working on it.
Well, you need to keep working. That's it.
Yeah, never give up.
It keeps the blood flowing. Yep. Peter Kennard. Yeah, thank you, Peter. Peter said it evolved into a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Well, it is 7:30 now. Thank you so much, David, for this wonderful presentation. It has been really inspiring to hear about the work that you've done and how you've managed to change this world, even in very small ways.
Thank you.
It makes a big impact.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we're waiting for the second part. So make a lot of paintings quick.
Are there any things that people need answers to or something quick, or how do we do that?
Yeah. Are your paintings on display at the Fleisher Center or at the school?
No, they're not. They're on display at my home sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes overpowering my living conditions and my family, but we're okay. We're filling all the walls.
Oh, okay.
But I'd love to share them in any way I can.
I have a few comments. Is there still time? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, David. Well, congratulations. I absolutely love your paintings. They are so good in many ways. And I have a few comments I want to make. Like, for example, I just from seeing them all together today, I get these feelings that in every painting you look at, not in this last one actually, in all the other ones I looked at, where there's, you're being a witness of something happening, and this becomes kind of like part of the meaning of the painting, which is very, really strong. And then you have a feeling when you look at them that something's not normal, and this is just I was looking at him, and just by the way you pose the compositions, which are absolutely genius, I think, it already tells you so much of a story. Like, for example, in the second painting where you have the factory that are those 6 green things, you know, it's very strange that you choose to put him right where you did, because there's a big space in the back, you know, that gives this feeling of emptiness, which is, and you see that things would move there, but what moves there are the machines, not the people. I don't have the feeling of there's anything human going on, you know, and in that sense, it reminds me of this timeless story. I mean, where there's a flow of a machine, but the human time is very different per se, and yeah, I mean, and so this commentary, I think, can go into many stages in life. I mean, it doesn't necessarily go back to that only event, but I think it speaks about very many things. And some of the images I thought were like, for example, the one of the tents, I thought were quite futuristic. Like, for some reason, it reminds me to the Italian futurist, you know, that kind of like motion painting. But again, you know, nothing's moving, and what's moving is probably the road that's going to have the cars, and everything else is empty. So it again takes me, you know, to speak about the human and this emptiness, and, you know, the world being moved by all these other scary things. And plus, I mean, it's like, you know, you present landscapes, like the very first one, you present this landscape, and, you know, again, you're being witness of the true landscape, because, you know, it's the mountain is there and the houses are there, but actually, you know, the point is this is the reality. It's being just all extracted. We don't see the other landscape anymore. So all those things, I think, are just amazing. And then I really want to say that I like the way you put your commentaries, because, I mean, not everybody, you know, could say, oh yeah, these women are giving, you know, are teaching somebody, the way you say it, because you don't say it in a very, I don't know how to explain it, but, you know, you're not demanding out of anybody, you're not giving them a hard time. It's just very simply, in a very unique way, just like, oh, here's a comment, you know, like, I feel like you put them very down there, but they are there. And, you know, this is you as a teacher again, not as a painting teacher. But anyways, those are my little comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with what was just said. You are able to empower people without taking the stage in a way that's like, I'm the one who's supposed to be telling the stories. You're like, someone has to, so I'll do it. And that's actually pretty special, and a rare quality in artists sometimes. So I really appreciate all that you've done, and how you've presented this work with everyone else. It's really beautiful, and thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you, and it's been a pleasure to work with you.
David, this is John David in West Virginia. We would like to suggest or invite you and Janet to come down for International Labor Day and have your exhibit on display at the Southern Appalachian Labor School in West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Sounds great, John. I'm down. As soon as we could get there.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the meeting, but this has been really, really inspiring, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Nice.
Yes. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thank
you
you,
all.
Mr. Green.
Yeah,
You catch up.
All right. You be well, all of you.
You too,
Okay.
David. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.